venue owners. This is Will Allison with the Venue Insights podcast. I just want to say thank you so much for listening. We are super excited to launch this show. Our goal is to bring you as much value and insight into the wedding venue industry as possible. We're going to be featuring top professionals from around the country, and I really hope you get something out of each episode. And if you're curious about what we do, we run a marketing growth program built specifically for venues. So if you're interested in teaming up or you just want to learn more, feel free to click the link in our description. We would love to join a call with you, chat, and see if we could be a good partner for you. So now here is the podcast with Brandee Gaar. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Venue Insights podcast. I am here with Brandee Gaar. Brandee runs the Wedding Pro CEO, a program designed to help wedding industry professionals think like executives so their business can thrive and scale to over 7 figures. Brandee also runs a leading wedding and event planning service in St. Augustine and Orlando, Florida. She's recognized as a top industry pro. So Brandee, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Well, first, I would love to get into your personal origin story in the industry. So how did you get into the industry and what kind of drew you to it?
Yeah, I I have always wanted to be an event planner since I honestly can remember having memories, like all the way back. I threw a dinner party for my parents when I was 6, and I just knew that's always what I wanted to do when I was in high school and figured out it was like a real degree I could get. There was no changing my mind. It was like laser focused. I went to school for hospitality, graduated, became a corporate event planner for one of the big major hotels here in Orlando. And then when I had my first daughter about 7 years later, I really didn't want to continue the grind of corporate event planning in a hotel. I had such an incredible job and worked for just one of the best companies. But I worked a lot, and I thought, I want to be able to see her awake. Like sometimes I would go 4, 5, 6 days without seeing her awake. And I was like, I don't think I can do this for the rest of my life. So I started working for another wedding planning company in town, and she was growing really quickly, but then decided that she really didn't want to be a big company. She was like, I want to handle a handful of events a year and be a mom. And I was like, I don't think that's the path I want. Like I definitely wanted more flexibility in my schedule, but I wanted to build an empire. And so she was like, well, what if you'll still work for me in the meantime, go ahead. Like I'll fully support you in building your own thing. And I was like, wow, okay. No one gets that opportunity, right? So I worked for her for another 2.5 years while I was building Blush. And then eventually Blush is what I just continued to build. And that was 18 years ago, which feels crazy. And now that daughter is almost 20. So
Wow.
yeah, it feels crazy. So I love it. I absolutely love planning events. It's like what I was born to do.
That's awesome. So obviously you started out, you worked for different event planning companies, but when you were first getting going on your own, what skills do you think that you had contributed most to your success, and how did you develop those skills over time?
Yeah, honestly, 100%. I have said this on so many podcasts, including my own, is I think I contribute most of my success to my ability to network and build relationships. And that is something that is kind of a lost art, I feel like, since the onset of so much social media. I think today, 2025, like it's such a great time to be alive and run a business. Like you can reach your end user so quickly. But back when I started my business, Instagram didn't exist, which makes me sound like a dinosaur. But Instagram is not that old, okay? Oh, Instagram didn't exist. Honestly, TikTok was not a thing. Facebook was only for college students. So really the way that you built relationships was in person. Like you had to go to the networking events. You had to build those relationships. And I was very blessed to have such an incredible group of mentors at the hotel that I worked for. I worked for the Gaylord Palms Resort here in Orlando. I just had the best mentors, and they took me to so many networking events, and they would introduce me to people. Getting my job there was through my network at my university. So I always knew that relationships were such a massive piece of the puzzle. And when I started Blush, I think one of the things that shocked me the most, I will never forget this day. I had built such an incredible network as a corporate event planner at the hotel. I went to my first networking event as the owner of my own company, right? Like I didn't have any big brand behind me. It was just me. And I went to a wedding networker, and I just expected to walk in and like know people, say hi, be all excited. I walked in and I froze. I can still picture the whole room. Like I just froze. I was like, I don't know a single human in this room. How do you walk up to people and just introduce yourself? So I went to the bathroom, freaked out. I was like, okay, you have two options. You quit your very high paying job to do this. Your husband is fully supporting this, and you're just going to walk out, like get it together. And so I walked back in the room, walked up to a table of people, introduced myself, and I say the rest is history. I mean, obviously it is difficult to network. It's difficult to make friends or to be the new kid, but our industry really is built on relationships. Like we all love having friends in the industry. It's just hard to be the one that breaks in. But I think that really helped me a lot. And I love talking to people about how simple and free it is to build a referral network.
Yeah, that's true. But I think it's so easy for people nowadays to just hide behind your computer screen and just market, through Instagram and Facebook, which is effective. But I think getting out there, meeting people, putting a face to the name, it's invaluable, and it's super, super important, especially in the wedding venue industry.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. We, especially since COVID, so many of us now work from home too. And so it's like you literally never get out unless you go to these networkers. And the thing that I get pushed back on all the time when I say that to students is they're like, oh my gosh, the networkers are such a waste of time. I'm like, no, you're wasting your time because you don't go there with a plan in mind. Like you need to go know who it is you're trying to make connection with, find out who can help connect you, go with like questions in mind and what your follow-up is going to be. What do you want out of this? And you don't walk up to somebody and say, hey, can I get on your vendor list? But really just creating that genuine connection, seeing how you can refer some of your clients to the person you're talking to, which creates a connection. There's lots of ways to do it, but I think hands down, that was the secret to my success, was the relationships I built early on and still continues to be, because I spend a lot of time building relationships outside of Instagram, outside of a computer screen.
Yeah, that's funny. Ian Ramirez from Venue Help Desk, he was saying the exact same thing. With all the automations, with all the, running ads, everything like that, at the end of the day, the soft skills are what are most important when you're running your business. So yeah, that's awesome. So when you were starting out, I'm assuming everyone faces setbacks, early on. What kept you going through those setbacks when you faced those early challenges?
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, I feel like I've had many, many, many of the setbacks. And honestly, I mean, this is going to sound like such a cliche answer, I think, but having my husband's support, because there were so many times where I was like, no, I'm done. I'm over it. Like, I can't do this anymore. It's a tough industry anyway. And not only that, but entrepreneurship is difficult, right? It's lonely. You often don't know who you can talk to and be vulnerable with. Our industry is an extremely emotional industry. So people, I feel like, are either like having their happiest day or screaming in your face. So like sometimes it can just be like, okay, no one's dying today. Let's get it together, And so a lot of times I would just be like, this is too hard. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he would say, no, like, this is what we're building. This is our legacy. Like, I believe in you. We can do this. And yeah, I think there's several times I would have thrown in the towel if he wouldn't have said, we got this, like, we can do this. So I think, I tell my students that a lot too. It's like, if you don't have your spouse's support, if you are married, or someone's support of a trusted friend that you can lean into, I do think it's a difficult journey if you don't have somebody, entrepreneurship in general, not even just our industry, but I feel like you have to have somebody that believes in you more than you do. And Simon Sinek, I actually watched a TikTok that he did one time about this, and he was like, there has to be someone that believes in you more than you do standing behind you for when things get hard. And so, yeah, I think that that's really important.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Having that support system is super, super important for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so obviously you're a coach in the industry. You talk to venue professionals all the time. So what would you say, like what mistakes do you see venue owners or vendors making most often when they're trying to scale their business?
Gosh, this is a good one. Okay. So I do think venues have a whole unique set of their own challenges that aren't really the same as some of the other vendors. So I love when I get to work with a venue because it's just a different than what I do on the daily, right? So I think a couple of things that are unique to venues, which obviously your audience is like, yes, this is me. One, you're first in the journey, right? Like couples are 9 times out of 10 they're booking their venue first, or at least touring venues first. And they just are so green. Like they don't even know what they don't know. They usually don't have a budget yet. They haven't even had the budget conversation. They got engaged yesterday. Like they're touring a lot. So most vendors are maybe up against 3 to 6 other vendors that they're looking at in the same category. Venues are like 8 to 15, which is crazy. So there's so much more competition. There's a longer buying cycle as well because they have to take time to tour all of these venues. It can't just be like, a Zoom call one night. Like they have to get into all these venues. So there's a lot of complications on that side. I think, a lot of the things that I love to see venues do to overcome some of those challenges that I think are huge misses with venues. A lot of them that I work with, the very first thing is like follow up. And it's shocking to me, Will, how few venues follow up if they don't book a tour. So if someone books a tour, it's like, yeah, we're all over them, right? Like they book the tour, they come do the tour, then we're following up, and they're great at that. But it's the inquiries that come in that never booked a tour because they inquired once and maybe you sent your pricing guide back, but you never continued that follow-up. And I think that is a massive miss, especially for venues, because again, going back to the fact that they're at the beginning of their buying cycle, they're so overwhelmed. They genuinely have no idea what they're doing at this point. And so being able to educate them with your follow-ups, being able to be that helping hand, being able to give them more information about what it looks like to have an event at your venue, and knowing your competition and being able to speak against your competition without speaking against your competition, right? So like in your emails and your text follow-ups, really pointing out what makes you unique and why people love having their events at your venue. So one of the biggest misses is just that follow-up from the inquiry to the tour. I think that that's really huge. The other one that I see, and I love getting to kind of see the sales team. Like when I work with venues, I do calls directly with their sales team as well, because it's like, yeah, you might not be the venue, as the venue owner, you may not be the one selling. And so I'm like, let's get your sales team in here. I love kind of seeing their eyes light up when we talk about how to nurture a lead once they've booked that tour, right? So a lot of times what I see is a couple books a tour, and it might be a week to 10 days out, and there's no communication, like zero, besides the typical standard response. It's like, here's the directions, here's how to show up, blah, blah, blah. There's no nurturing of that lead. And I'm like, we want them to be so hot by the time they step toe on our property that they're as long as everything checks out, like they're ready to sign before they leave. Yep. And we don't do a great job of nurturing. And so what I love to work with venue owners on is saying, okay, they book the tour, reach out personally, a personal text from your sales team, whoever it is that's going to be doing the tour, saying, hey, I'm Sarah, I'm with such and such venue. I saw that you booked a tour with us next week. I'm going to be doing your tour. I cannot wait. Who else is joining you? Where are you coming from? Have you chosen your wedding date yet? If that's not already on their intake form, right? Like any kind of question just to get them talking, learn a little bit more about them. This is going to help so much so that by the time they walk on site, there's not that awkward, like, hey, I'm Sarah, they already know you. So I think that those are 2 really big pieces that we miss in the nurture prior to them even coming for a tour.
I think that is so, so big, especially prior to the tour. If you can make that human connection before they actually show up, the tour is going to be so much easier because you don't have to, like you were saying, you don't have to go through like the awkward introductions and, getting to know this person. If you can make that connection beforehand, it's really going to smooth things out on the tour.
Yeah. And I think too, it's just like, a venue is slightly different and then it's a less emotional purchase, right? Because there's an actual product. There's an actual,
Right.
like, this is where they're having it. But the emotional piece of that purchase still plays a big role. And so you really still need to have that kind of buy-in. And think about it. If you've been texting, even if you just have like a 1 or 2 text exchange with a couple before they come on site, now when they get there, instead of having to be like, hi, I'm Sarah, and it's this cold first meeting, you can be like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited you guys are
Right.
finally here. Come on in. And that's just such a much different greeting. You're starting off so many more feet ahead than other venues, especially if you have a small sales team that can do this versus like the corporate hotel down the street. They're not doing it, right? So these are just things that you can do to give yourself a leg up so that that tour already starts with just such a warm, excited lead.
Right. So this is a broader question, but what emerging trends are you seeing in the venue industry right now? And how can venue owners or vendors stay on top of them or ahead of them?
I think one of the big things that I am talking about so much to my students and inside of my platforms is just the importance of texting, which really isn't new, but I will say I do think it's a fairly new concept to the wedding industry because it's so underutilized. I'm actually shocked sometimes by how underutilized it is because I've used it in my businesses for years now. But the open rate and the engagement rate on a text is multiple times higher than an email. And there's all kinds of studies out there. So I'm not going to quote a number because I feel like there's all kinds of studies of different numbers, but multiple times higher than the open rate of an email. Also, because so few vendors are still using, it, it's often that if you are one that are texting in your sales funnel, that you're the only one that they're looking at that's texting in their sales funnel. And I've done a lot of content around Gen Z and how they buy, and they definitely are big on texting. But it's always so funny to me how many millennials and honestly even Gen X will be like, I'm not even Gen Z and I much prefer a text, right? And I'm like, yeah. So I think that's, again, not new, but I do think it's new to the wedding industry. And I think it's a massive piece of the puzzle that we're missing in our industry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the last stat that I read was a text message open rate is around 98%. Email average is like 20 to 30%. So there's a massive difference.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
It's like, I think what's the pushback I typically get is like, well, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to be salesy. And I'm like, they reached out to you. That you're not cold calling from a leads list. Like they reached out to you. They said, hey, we're interested in your venue. We'd love to know more. You send them an email. I definitely think email automations need to still go, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know, Will, if you remember this far back in the industry because you're so much younger, but I'd say maybe 8 years ago, this was what we did with email. Like everybody would say, you can't automate your emails. You cannot. Like it's so terrible. You can't automate your emails because they have to be personal. So we'd get an inquiry and you'd personally respond to that inquiry. And like having an automation was unheard of because it was just like, ooh, you're lazy. And so now who on earth actually sends in a personalized email? Maybe a few people, but to be honest, most of us are automating our emails. And honestly, most couples that get them are expecting them to be automated.
Right. So now moving into some hiring and delegation type topics. So to someone who is already successful, let's say a venue doing 30 to 50 weddings per year, but they're looking to grow and build out their team, like what are some hiring tips that you would give to that person?
Yeah. So this is going to be very unique to a venue because this is a different advice than I would give to other vendors for the most part. But I would say get a sales team on board. And the reason for that is because typically venues are getting a lot more leads. So your conversion rate is lower than what a typical vendor would be because again, couples are shopping 8 to 15 venues and we're not getting shopped nearly as much as like a planner, photographer, DJ, right? And so I think having a dedicated person, so I say sales team, but it can be a salesperson depending on your volume, right? But having someone on your team who's sole focus, if you're wanting to scale, is getting a lead, texting them immediately, sending that immediate personal text, making sure that your automations are going, getting people booked into a tour, doing the tours, following up. All of that is very difficult for a business owner to keep up with, which is why so often when I start working with a venue, if they don't have a salesperson in place, I see that their follow-up is terrible, because who has time? You're like, yeah, if they book a tour and they book, great. Like, I'm in, I give great tours and I'm nice to people. So that's how you're getting your bookings. But what about all the people who are just falling through your funnel because you didn't follow up? So having that dedicated person to really drive those sales up, if you could increase your conversion rate, but only even like 2 or 3%, that's a massive increase to your revenue. That person would pay for it themselves immediately, right? So that would be the first thing that I would outsource as a venue owner, is your sales.
And so when you were running your business, what was in the early days, what was the biggest hire for you that helped you, delegate a certain task and really helped you reach that next level?
Yeah. So my first hire was someone who's still with me, Allison. You guys have heard me on my podcast. I talk about her all the time. She's like my right hand. And she's been with me for 17 years. She has a very different skill set than I have. And I think that that's really, really important, is to hire an opposite skill set. So she is very detailed, very logistical, very tactical. And I'm not any of those. Like, I'm like big picture, like, here's an idea. Can we make it happen? And so it's been so helpful for me, because I can throw ideas in the air and she kind of catches them and is like, wait a second, these are the ones we can implement. Here's how we can implement it. She was also a lead planner in my company for years. Honestly, she I think is doing her last wedding this year. We've pulled her weight back off of weddings over the last several years, but she was also a lead planner. So I think something that's really, really important is to make sure that you're hiring somebody, one, that has an opposite skill set than you, that can help with some of the things you're not great at or that you just hate and they like suck your soul, right, in your business. But then also is somebody who can assist in producing revenue. That first hire, a lot of times we hire either a social media manager, right? That's like the number one thing people outsource first, is a social media manager or a VA. And while I think both of those things can be helpful, so it's kind of a case-by-case basis, a lot of times I would suggest hiring somebody who has a skill set you don't, but can also generate revenue in your business. So if you're a photographer, a DJ, florist, venue owner, whatever it is, you want that first hire to also be able to help you maximize the revenue in your business, because you really don't have just the profit to bring on a full-time salary if they're not going to also help increase revenue.
Right. That makes sense. And that kind of goes into my next question. I feel like everyone has their strengths. Some are naturally great with clients, while others are better at like back end SOP driven work. So what advice would you give to someone who's maybe more introverted and who struggles with the client facing activities? Should they hire immediately and try and find someone who is on the opposite end of the spectrum, or should they try and develop those skills, or maybe a little bit of both?
Yeah. When you say client facing activities, can you give me an example? Because I feel you're going to be like a photographer, you have to be good at taking photographs of people, right?
Right, that's true. I guess more in like the networking type of stuff, or just kind of being the
Social
face of
media.
the business. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, this is my tough love on this one. I tell my
Right.
students this all the time. I'm like, you know what? None of us were good at doing our books at one time either, but we have to do them until we can hire somebody to do it, right? None of us are good at HR, but if you have a team, you're going to have to be, right? Honestly, some of us, like let's say with the photographer example, you might be great at taking photographs, but maybe you aren't great at being organized and creating shot lists and like that kind of stuff. So, but you had to get good at it in the beginning to grow your business. So I say the same thing really with like social media and marketing. It's your business. So at least in the beginning, you are the one that has to build and grow it. I mean, unless you're going to have a business partner, I think that that's different, obviously, but your first hire should complement your skill set, but you still have to be the one that cares the most about growing your business. So, I also think that a lot of times people use, I'm not good at social media, or I'm not good on camera, or I'm not good at networking as an excuse. And I'm like, well, you can learn how to be good at it. Like this is a funny example that I use a lot, is like both of my daughters, two of my daughters played volleyball for years. I'm like, I spent 10, 15 hours a week in a volleyball gym in the bleachers watching them play volleyball. That does not mean that I can overhand serve, right? Like I literally can't even get the ball over the net, no matter how I get it over the net, right? But that's because I sat on the sidelines and watched. If I got on the court and learned and practiced for those 10 or 15 hours a week, I'd probably get really, really good, at least decent at playing volleyball, right? So it's the same concept. Like if you just scroll social media and you just watch other people do it, yeah, you're not going to get better at it. But if you just start posting and you suck at it at first, you're going to get better. I mean, some of the things, still to this day, some of the stuff I post, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. But you hit post anyway, right? But for sure, in the beginning, I was not a natural at social media at all. Like I hated it. I would sweat through my shirt. I threw up the first time I went live. Like I hated it. But I was like, this is it. Like this is how businesses are built now. And I have to figure it out. And so I think if, how much do you want it? I think is my answer. And I don't think you should outsource that. I think you need to learn how to network and build your business, and then you can start to outsource it, right? But you have to care the most about scaling your business.
Right. That makes sense. So mindset and strategy. Is there some sort of mindset shift that has helped your coaching clients or even yourself go from struggling to consistently filling their calendar and really making that big jump in their business?
Yeah, 100%. It's, the biggest mindset shift I see with my students is that they are not afraid to say they want to build a successful business. I think, especially in the wedding industry, it is a pretty female dominated industry, except for DJs and sometimes photographers, right? It is mostly females, but even with the guys, a lot of times, it's like, oh, I want to do this to help people. I want to be part of their legacy. Like, I just love planning parties, and that's great. But like, there's 1,000 other things that you could do, or you could be running it as a charity if you're not going to make money doing it. And so helping people to understand that it's okay to want to make money is really probably the biggest mindset shift that I work with my students on in the very beginning. It's like the very first thing we talk about when someone comes into our program is being okay with wanting to make money, because at the end of the day, that's what a business is supposed to do. It's not a nonprofit. It's, money and the income that you make from your business and that you're ultimately able to pay to yourself is what helps you to be able to live a life, to take vacations with your family, to be able to put food on the table or keep the lights on, or to be able to, be an entrepreneur and stay home. Whatever it is that you wanted for your business, the only way you can continue to do that is if your business makes money. Otherwise, it's a charity, a nonprofit, or a hobby, and that's totally fine. But then call it that, right? So that mindset shift of saying, it's okay for me to want to say, I want my business to make money. And I'm like, yeah, you should be saying that. And they're like, okay. So it feels really good. It's exciting when people kind of have that shift.
Mm-hmm. So this is a loaded question, but when it comes to burnout, I feel like there is a point where the more work you do, the less progress you actually make, and it actually becomes a net negative because of how overworked you are. And I feel like as entrepreneurs, we sometimes create busy work just for the sake of feeling productive, but it doesn't actually push us towards our goals. So how do you stay focused on the high ROI money-making activities in your business? And how do you manage burnout and know when to take a step back?
Yeah. Hey, this is a good question. And you're right. It is kind of a big loaded question. It's, burnout is something I think, I'm probably going to take heat for this. I think it's an overused term in that building a business is hard. Like it just is. And our industry doesn't make it any easier, especially event planners. We're in the top 5 most stressful jobs in the world. That's insane to me, but also feels real. And so our industry is hard. Building a business is hard. So I think sometimes we put unrealistic expectations on what it should feel like to build a business because we see all these people online who are like, I work 4 hours a week from a beach in Tahiti with a margarita in my hand and I make 7 figures a year. And I'm like, one, you're lying. Two, that it just sets such unrealistic expectations because even if that was true, and whatever, maybe it is, right? But there were years that you didn't see behind the scenes to get them to the point to be able to do that. Right. So like, for instance, Blush, I could go on social media and say that all the time. I could be like, I spend an hour a week running Blush. It does multiple 6 figures a year. I literally never touch it. All of that's true, but that came from 16 years of grinding it out in that business and building up the team to do it. And like I said, many times of wanting to just throw in the towel. So I think it sets unrealistic expectations, which is why so many people are like, oh, I'm burnt out. I'm burnt out. I'm like, you're not burnt out. You just are mismanaging your time and your expectations are unrealistic. So
Right.
I think really understanding what moves the needle in your business is massively important. So the two things that I see, I've worked with almost 1,500 wedding pros at this point, just in being a coach. The things that I see that get missed the most on a daily basis are your sales and your marketing, which are the lifeblood of your business. But what happens is you wake up, you jump on your computer, go straight to your inbox, and all of a sudden, everyone else has taken control of your day. And so then it gets to be 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. You still have 4 things left on your to-do list at a minimum, and you never touched your marketing and you never followed up with leads that day. And the problem with that is that that's how you end up in this cycle of like huge highs and huge lows, because the only people that are booking are the people who keep knocking and being like, hey, can you send me a contract? Can you send me a contract? The only people who are finding you are people who are being referred to you. Don't have a great ecosystem of marketing because you're not doing it on a consistent daily basis. So understanding to flip that script, one of the things I talk about all the time on my podcast is like, do not open your computer at all that day until your marketing and your sales are done. Now, obviously, some of that has to be done on your computer, but don't open your inbox, right? So
Right.
get up. What marketing do you need to do? Do you need to go on social media? Do you need to go make a couple of stories? Do you need to make reels? Whatever it is that you need to do that day to market your business, touch base with another vendor, sign yourself up for a networking event. Then your sales, follow up with all of your leads. Have you followed up with your leads? Has every single one of them been touched?
Right.
Did any new leads come in that need you to personally follow up? Once those things are done, then you can get into your day. But if you miss those two things, you're not moving the needle. And that's how you end up on the roller coaster of like high highs and low lows, because you're only doing those things in off season.
Right. Yeah. So it's less focusing on, whether I'm feeling burnt out or not. It's more just focusing on the right things within your business to create the outcomes that you want to create.
Yeah. And I don't want to minimize, the fact that I do think burnout is a real thing. I've definitely been there myself. Like, I don't want anybody who's listening to this, it's like in, having a mental health moment where you're like, I can't. I don't want to minimize that. I just think it's an overused term. I think it does exist. I just think every day that feels hard doesn't mean you're burnt out. Like, it means that like you need to get better at time management and look at how you can reorganize your time and what's a priority. I mean, for me, even super transparently, last August, we're recording this in May. Last August, I really felt like I was just kind of like, I just was burning the rope at all the ends and not really doing exactly what I'm saying here. Like, take control of your day. And I kind of just let it spiral out of control. And I was like, time out, reset. Like, something's got to change, right? And so really understanding and looking at my business and saying, what can be outsourced? What am I doing every single day that I should absolutely not be doing? And then what do I need to focus on every day and let the rest of it go? Like, what doesn't even need to be done that I'm doing every single day? So yeah, I mean, it can happen to all of us, but I wouldn't say I was burnt out. I would say I needed a reset. So
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I heard someone say, if you want an unbalanced outcome, at the end of the day, you're going to have to work, you're going to have to spend an unbalanced amount of time doing the thing that is going to lead to that unbalanced outcome. So I agree. I think burnout is 100% real, but you have to also, ask yourself, okay, am I doing the right things in my business, and am I giving the right amount of time into these specific tasks that are going to generate me the outcome that I want to generate?
Yeah, and understanding what that outcome is that you're looking for, right? Like my definition of success is different than other people's. Like I know that I am looking to build something massive. And I don't mince words about that. I'm like, I work really hard every day and I'm grinding it out and I know what we're building. But some people want to build a lifestyle business. Like they become a
Right.
planner or a photographer because they want to spend time with their kids and be a stay-at-home parent and, make a little bit of money that can help their household or pay for their kids' sports and things like that. That's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to understand the difference and say, okay, well, then these tactics that this person is using might not be right for me. And one of the things, like you just kind of mentioned, Alex Hormozy,
Yep.
he describes it as saying, to build something exceptional, you have to, by definition, be the exception. And it's like,
Right.
yeah. So if you want that, if you want something that no one else has, you have to work like no one else does. And so I think that that's a big thing that we need to recognize.
Yeah. So sales and marketing. This is another broader question, but in 2025, how has the marketing landscape changed? I know it's still, kind of the same at the end of the day, but what do you see as like the biggest missed opportunity in specifically how venues or vendors market themselves?
Yeah. Honestly, with venues, I'll speak to venues specifically because I think it's a little bit unique, and that's obviously your listeners. I really think venues make a big mistake with not personalizing their brand. Again, they're
Yes.
going, too many venues rely on the fact that they have a product. And sometimes, I mean, I managed a venue for years. I was like, ugh, as a planner, I would have died to have this much content available to me because at any day I could walk downstairs and just film like B-roll around the venue and put something over it. You have so much content, opportunities to film in your own venue. But we rely on that too much. We don't personalize the brand and put a face behind it, put a team behind it, and talk about what you're doing that day, what tours are coming up, how you do a tour, why it's unique, why your spaces are unique, how you use different spaces in your venue. Like there's so much content. But what happens is we just post like a pretty picture of the front of our venue, or we post a bride getting ready in the bridal suite, and we don't personalize why they should get married at our venue, what
Yeah.
makes our venue unique. And that's what couples are looking for. How are you stopping their scroll? There's just so many venues that people can choose from now. And you have to tell people why you're unique and why you're different and get them to stop that scroll. So I think that's the biggest miss. And I think that's the thing that is really going to set venues apart from others in their industry is humanizing it.
Yep. Yeah, we're really big on that. We run our clients' paid ad campaigns, and what we
Okay.
have found is if you film like a selfie style video of you in front of your venue, you do a little pitch, you show your team, you show the people who work there, it's not only gonna, lower your cost per lead, you're gonna get better results on your ad campaigns, but you're also gonna find that the people that show up for tours are gonna be a little bit warmer. They're gonna feel like
Yes.
they already know you a little bit. And so when they get to the venue and they're touring, it's going to be an easier sell because you've put in that personalization before they even get to your venue. So that's big. And also, that's something you can do with the pre tours as well. Like if someone books a tour, you can do the same type of thing where you reach out to them, you give them a call, you can send them a video, on your phone. So I think you're so right. The personalization is huge, especially nowadays on social media.
Yeah, it's massive. So I really encourage venues to lean into that because so few are doing it that you're really the standout if you are.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And so similar type of topic, how do you attract couples who, without lowering your prices or offering heavy discounts, how do you attract couples who understand the value that you're bringing to the table?
That's a great question. I mean, I think you have to understand the value that you're bringing to the table, which is so interesting because I think that that's a huge miss when I'm working with venues. I'm like,
Mm,
well, what does make you unique against your competitor? What's interesting about this too, this is actually okay. So I'm hoping this is going to answer your question, Will, but
Yeah.
and speaking of, attracting couples who kind of understand your value, what you're bringing to the table, I think one of the things that I see venues, a mistake that they make in doing that is that they try to be so unique, right? We want the venue to be unique, but oftentimes your packages or your pricing is so unique that it's confusing to couples. And so then they're trying to figure out how to compare your venue pricing to the other three venues that they got in your same market. And they're like, I don't get it. Like, a lot of times I see venues that will kind of throw everything in the kitchen sink into the pricing. And then they've got this huge sticker, right? And the other three venues in their market all price like, here's our base, and then here's the things that you can add on. And they're like, I don't want to do that. That feels gross. And I'm like, that's totally fine. And there's not a right answer there, but understand that as a couple who literally has no clue about what I'm looking for right now, they're trying to compare apples to apples. So if the other venues in your market are all listing their pricing like this, I don't think it's necessarily wrong that you list yours different, but understand that it's confusing to the buyer. They're like, I don't get it. What makes them 3 times higher than everyone else? Really, you're not 3 times higher than everyone else, because once they have to add in all those required fees, you're going to be the same price. But at first glance, they can't understand that. And so a lot of times we try to get too unique with our pricing, I feel like. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong if you do it that way, but if you're feeling like we had 2 venues we worked with a couple months ago, totally different markets, both had the exact same issue. And when we fixed that to really just write our pricing similarly to how our competition was writing it so people could compare, and then create a comparison chart for them, their sales went up significantly because couples were then able to understand the value. Like, why are you different and what makes you unique? You can charge more if you can explain that. But a lot of times what happens is you're actually getting canceled from the pool of people that are going to come toward just simply because they don't understand how
Right.
you're
That's
different,
actually, yeah, no, that's a great tip. Just improving the clarity within your pricing, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that was a backwards answer to your question, because you were asking
No,
how can
that,
you show your value? But I think that's a big mistake that venues are making, is that you think you're showing your value, but in reality, you're just sticker shocking them, and then they cancel you out before you even get the opportunity to say why you're unique. Now, I would say if you can get past that part, one of the things I love helping venues work on is really what we talked about with the social media, is personalizing that brand and just talking a lot about what's the experience like when they come for a tour. Can you do almost like a mock tour, kind of sped up as a reel on social media? That's interesting. Like, they don't even know what's going to happen at a tour because they've never gone on them before, right? So like, what is the experience of working with your team like? What do couples say about having their wedding at your venue? And how can you really play that up in your reviews and things like that, instead of just posting a review? Talk about the review. Like, we loved working with Sally and Mike because they were looking for a place that all of their guests could stay for the whole weekend. And one of the things that makes our venue unique is that we only book one wedding per weekend. So you can have your guests here the whole time with you, like whatever that is. But taking a review, pulling out something that makes you unique from your competition and talking about it is so much better than just like posting a review.
right. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So this is for someone who is like looking to get into the industry. They want to open up a venue. What do you see as the average profit margins for venues? And so for someone that, is already a venue, what are some effective ways to improve those profit margins?
Well, this is a great question. So, effective ways to increase the profit margin. So, I don't know how you feel about this, Will, so I may take some heat for this, but I definitely think that any vendor that is exclusive to the venue should be paying a commission to that venue. Now, I say exclusive because I don't do pay to play. I know that's a hot topic on Threads, but what I see often is that you have a venue doing 30 to 60 events a year, and they have an exclusive caterer that they work with, and they take $0 back from that caterer. And my thoughts on that are, one, it's very common in my market for a commission to be paid to the venue and from the caterer. Let me get that clear, because, planners, DJs, like all the venues aren't saying like, hey, you have to pay to be on my list. That's different. That's a totally different topic. But your caterer, one, if they're exclusive, again, you don't just have a random list of caterers, but they're exclusive, one, you're handing them the sale. So they don't have to work for that sale at all. You're literally handing it to them. Two, they're typically using your ice machine, your warming kitchen, your electricity, cleaning supplies, whatever it is that you're providing, they're using all of those things. So there is an expense to having them there. And a small commission of 10%, 8 to 15%, I tend to go on the higher side, but do what you feel feels good to you, can really help to offset some of those costs and add to your bottom line and create a really cohesive partnership between you and the caterer. I also believe in doing the exact same thing with the bar company. If you are exclusive to a bar company, I think, again, taking a commission from them for using the ice, using your kitchen, using whatever it is, cleaning supplies that you have there, but that exclusivity is worth something. And so having that commission come back is a really big piece of profit that you are missing out on.
Okay.
I told you, I was like, I don't know how you feel about this, Will, because it's definitely a hot topic, but
I've never heard anyone, it's very unique. And I mean, it does make sense, like from the venue's point of view, 100%.
it honestly makes sense from the caterer's point of view and the bar
Yeah.
company's point of view too, though. Like I coach all kinds of different wedding pros because we coach specifically on business, so sales, marketing, profitability. So we coach all kinds of different wedding pros. And I've also managed a venue, and we had an exclusivity with both a bar company and a caterer. And we actually charged a really high commission. And the point was because we were doing about 100 events a year. And that caterer did not have to have a sales team to do that. They didn't have to follow up. They didn't have to spend any time booking that client at all. We literally handed it to them. In addition to that, because of all the supplies and things that we were giving to them, allowing them to come in and out of the venue as they needed to, our events were simply just easier than any of the other events that they were working at, like private residence or venues that they didn't have that relationship with.
Yeah.
So they were happy. They were like, here's your check every month. Like, yes, because we were spoon feeding them clients. So it's just a really big piece of profit margin. If you think about it, 10% of a catering bill is not a small amount of money. 10% of a liquor bill is not a small amount of money. The other thing that I would say, and this is probably not something I would do in the beginning, or I don't know, Will, you may say, yes, I would do this right in the beginning, but would be doing alcohol yourself. Obviously, there's just an obscene profit margin on the bar. There's a lot of liability and there's a lot of insurance and things that need to go into it, plus ordering and having supplies. But if you can master that, I mean, that's just a massive piece of profitability for a venue to do their own.
Yeah. And it makes sense because, I mean, if you own like a corporate building and you're leasing it out to a restaurant and that restaurant is making money, they're paying you because you're providing the building that they're making money in. So it does actually make like logical sense.
Yeah, and 10% is
Yeah.
nothing to that caterer either to
For
pay
sure.
for leads. Think about how much we all pay to listing sites for leads
Yeah.
all the time, and they're not even guaranteed. This one's literally like, here, it's closed. Here, it's closed.
Yeah.
10% is nothing. I would take it
Yeah, you're-
100 times.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense. So, what are some common mistakes that maybe you made earlier in your career or that you see a lot of venue owners make early within, opening their business? So, like, what are those common mistakes that you see people just repeating over and over again, and how
Yeah.
can they fix those?
Yeah. So this one isn't necessarily specific to venue owners, but I do see a lot of venue owners do it as well. But the biggest mistake I see done right away, and it never gets fixed, is not paying yourself from the beginning of your business. And that's something I'm extremely passionate about, is that if you're not making money from your business, why are you doing it? You could have stayed at your 9 to 5 and actually gotten a paycheck every day, every week. And so I'm really passionate about this. And the reason I'm so passionate about doing it right from the beginning is it creates a habit, right? So if obviously in the beginning of your business, it's like you're not even making money. What are you paying yourself? But if you create that habit of paying yourself, $100 a month in the beginning, something, and then you start to just slowly increase that amount of money, it creates, one, the habit of paying yourself, but two, also the understanding that you are an expense of your business. And too often when we're calculating our expenses, the best is when I'm working with a vendor that's a service-based vendor, so like DJ, photographer, planner, that doesn't really have a ton of overhead. My first question is always, what's your overhead? What's your break even? And they're like, oh my gosh, it's like not that much at all. It's like a couple $100s. And I'm like, well, then you're not paying yourself because you are making more than that, right? You're worth more than that. And so when you count yourself, a salary for yourself, even if it's a small amount at first, as an expense of your business, it helps you to start understanding that that is a true expense. So your break even includes paying yourself and you're not skipping payroll. And the problem is so few people do it from the beginning. You end up being 3 to 5 years in business and you're still just taking what's left over. I don't know that many business owners who have a lot of leftover in their business every month. And so you end up getting nothing several months out of the year.
That makes sense. Yeah. If you're not paying yourself, then I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah, why are you doing it? Right. Yeah. And it's,
100%.
I get it. Like thankfully I had a mentor very early on that said, pay yourself right from the beginning. And I was like, okay. And so obviously it was a small amount, but we did go many, many years as part of my like business testimony is this is why I'm so passionate about teaching wedding pros about how to run a profitable business is because we went years where our slow season is summer here in Orlando. Like no one wants to get married when it's like hot, buggy, and hurricaney. And so it's dead here in the summer. And my husband and I both work full time for our business now for 14 years. And we would go sometimes a whole summer and have to skip paying ourselves. And it's like, honestly, I don't even know how our mortgage got paid some years because I was like, what are we doing? Like there's no money coming into our house. And it's just not how you can budget life, but it's also not how to run a business. I mean, you've got to be able to include, so learning that and teaching myself how to, flatten out those expenses, learning from mentors outside the industry on how a business is supposed to run, how finances are supposed to run. And now coming back and getting to teach that to the wedding industry, especially because we are such a cyclical industry, right? Like we have really high seasons and really low seasons, helping business owners in our industry flatten that amount and understand how much they need every single month so that they don't have to skip payroll. That's a really big joy for me because it was such a painful thing for us to learn. So I really love getting to help wedding pros figure that out.
Yeah. And I feel like also there's something to the fact of if you're not paying yourself, I feel like it kind of removes, part of the joy and part of the comfort of running a business. And I feel like you won't have as much left to kind of put back into the product itself. So I feel like it's kind of a lose-lose for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a good point, Will, because it's like, we quit our jobs typically because we're like, I want a more flexible schedule. I want to call the shots. Like I want to say which clients I'm working with. And that's all fine and good, except, you're not making any money. And so then things start getting tense at home. It's like, hey, you had said this business was going to bring something in, or, like now you're spending 80 hours a week and missing your kids' soccer games on the weekends, but you can't even pay for their soccer anymore. And that's where it just gets like, yeah, what are you doing this for? It doesn't really make any sense. So you have to be the first expense of your business.
Right. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So this one might put you on the spot a little bit, but can you share a success story of like a venue owner or a vendor that you've coached who made like a significant turnaround in their business or just a significant jump?
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, there's so.
I'm sure you've got a lot of them.
Yeah, thankfully, yes. Thankfully, yeah. I do. And it's always kind of like, okay, which one do I want to highlight? But I just literally 2 days ago got a Slack from one of my clients who's been in my program for a little while now. Maybe I think this is her second year. And it just, I was like, this is it. Like, this is why we do this. So she's a planner in Canada, and she had been listening to me for a while. She said probably a year, and she would listen to my podcast and be like, I'm not going to build a team. I don't want to do that. I don't want to have this big empire. Like, I just want to make enough money to support, my kids' activities and like bring a little bit of extra money into her home. And she was super successful. Like, she had a great company. But she got to the end of season, I guess in 2023, and she said she sat in her car and just bawled. She was like, I hate my business so much. Like, she was making pretty good money. She was paying herself, so all good things. But she was like, I haven't seen my kids in weeks. I'm so tired. And she's in a market in Canada where it's like their season is pretty short, but it's just, it just is 4 months of just go, right? And so she just was like, I can't do this anymore. So she finally reached out and said, I don't really want to build a team, but I want what you have. Like, I want to be able to spend time with my kids and make money. So I said, well, I only teach how to build a team, so you're gonna have to get on board with that. Like, I don't teach you how to be a solo. So she jumped in with both feet, doubled her income in about 8 months, which was amazing
Wow.
because that's exactly what we talk about. So doubled her revenue. And the reason we were able to do that was we helped her bring on support, right? So immediately bringing on part-time and fractional help to get her out of the weeds, then started bringing on planners into her company. And we've continued to build that. She texted me the other day, and it just honestly brought tears to my eyes, Will, because she was like, my husband and I left on a trip for 5 days, and she did not take her computer, which is one of the things we talk about all the time. I'm like, don't take your computer. Like, once you get to that point, we've built her team out. She didn't need to. She didn't take her computer. She told her team she was checked out, like, only call me if there's an emergency. And she was completely off grid, which was amazing, and came back to 3 signed clients. She only had a few emails in her inbox that she had to check because her assistant was checking all of them for her. She pays herself way more than she ever did in the past, and she has about a fifth of the weddings herself that she took back before she started working with us. And it's so crazy. It sounds like, how's that even possible? But these are the things we do all the time, because it's not about working harder. It's about building systems and a team that allow you to step into seeing your business from the top down. And that's what she's able to do now. She's able to, like, walk away from her business for a few days and everything keeps running without her. She's able to come back and really be that visionary, be that person that's like casting the growth, pushing the team to scale even further, opening new markets. And you can't do any of that when you're so bogged down with client work that you can't even see the path through the forest, right? So
Right.
she's just one of many, but I've loved watching. I think the reason I love her story so much is because she fought the system for so long. Like, she was like, I'm not doing
Mm.
that. I'm not doing that. And that's a lot of what I see in our industry is like, I don't need to build an empire. I don't need to build a team. I just want to make enough money to support my house and to spend time with my kids. And I'm like, well, those two things don't really go together. Like, if you're a solopreneur, you're not spending weekends with your kids, you're at weddings, right? Yeah, so it's been really fun to watch that unfold.
That's awesome. So real quick on the SOP topic,
Yeah.
do you have any like advice or software systems or like simple hacks when it comes to like someone, like in that case, someone just starting out, they're building out their SOPs. How do you go about building out those SOPs, and like do you have any simple tips or tricks to help build them out?
Yeah, I swear I want to coin a word that is not SOP for this, because I feel like first of all, I have like it's like a trigger word for me, because my husband is constantly like, do we have an SOP for that? Do we have an SOP for that? Like, for the last 10 years in our business, it's kind of a funny thing between us now, because I'm like, no. But I also think, just in general, people hate that word, right? It's like, I don't have them. They're not updated. So really, my simple hack to this, and the software that I use, is Loom. Everyone should have
Yep.
it. It lives on my desktop. I Loom multiple times a day, which sounds kind of crazy because I'm not constantly creating SOPs, but it's just a really it's free for the most part. We have the paid plan now, but it's free for a long time, to be able to create short videos for your team. You show your screen and you can talk at the same time. So you think about it like somebody sitting behind you, like sitting over your shoulder. That's exactly what a Loom is. They're watching you do it. And so for us, we don't really create SOPs anymore. We create more of just like a lesson guide, right? And it's a simple
Yeah.
Google Doc that's like, here's how to create a blog. Here's how to post the blog. Here's how to post a social media post, right? Like, and they literally are watching you do it. The really cool thing about it is, when it gets out of date, somebody that's like, let's say somebody's watching it and they're like, oh, I don't think this is the way that you do it anymore. It's like, oh, you're right. Quickly refilm it. Like, it takes 2 minutes, right? To be like, oh,
Right.
let me show you how to do it. It gets refilmed and it gets updated. It also has a transcript with it now. So you just copy and paste the transcript if you have somebody that wants to like read. You can also copy and paste the transcripts into ChatGPT and create like a training bot for your team, which is great. So you can, if your team has a question like, how do I write a blog? And they can tap it into your training bot, and then the training bot pulls up your Loom for it because it has a transcript it can read. So that's mine. That's my simple hack,
Yeah.
is Looms for everything.
I second that. Loom is the best software ever, especially
Yeah.
for SOPs, because there's no easier way to see how something is done than to literally watch exactly how it's done, click by click. And like you said, you can narrate the entire thing. So if there are like little nuances of certain steps, you can just add that in there. And yeah, someone can literally just pull up Loom on, their monitor, have whatever they're working on their screen, and they can just do everything exactly how it needs to be done. 100%. Loom is incredible.
Yeah, it's my bestie. And I love that you
Yeah.
use the word nuances because I say that all the time to
Yeah.
my students. I'm like, sometimes you're creating a process, but then it's like, well, every once in a while this will happen. You can say that in a Loom. When you're typing it
Right.
into an SOP,
Exactly.
it doesn't make any sense?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so last couple questions. So, what's one piece of advice that you would give to someone brand new to the industry? So, a venue owner or an event planner just starting out in today's market, where should their focus be, and what's just one piece of advice you'd give to them?
Yeah. One, get out of the house or your venue and go network. Like, go make
Mm,
friends, go figure out who you want to network with, meet the people. Like, that honestly, there's nothing you can do better for your brand than going and just meeting people, whether that's at a networker or for coffee or whatever, going to their venue. And then the second would be put 100% of your effort behind marketing. Like which really kind of goes together, right? One is networking and the other social media, but they're both they're both marketing. Um, you don't have a business unless you have clients, and you don't have clients unless you're marketing. So, a lot of times what I see is like a new vendor and they're creating all these systems and they're building out their CRM. And I'm like, you don't have any clients yet. What are you? No, like you don't build, you're building it backwards. Get the clients, do it messy, and then build out the systems. But you don't even know what system you need to build out until you know how you want to work with the client, right? So you kind of have to like create the manual process and then systematize it. But yeah, I think too many people build it backwards. So I would say go find clients, market
yeah,
yourself.
100%. And out of curiosity, what are your clients, what are their top lead sources? Like where they get most of their leads and most of their high quality leads?
Yeah, yeah. High quality leads, I think, are always going to be referrals, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so passionate about networking.
Hmm.
And then the second would really be social media. So Instagram typically is one of our biggest lead sources. And then Google would be another really big one. So I would say those would probably be the top three, which are all warm lead sources. Because if they found you on Instagram, I should say Google's not a warm lead source. I shouldn't say that. But Instagram and referrals are obviously a hot and then a warm lead source, hot being referral. And then Google is more of a cold lead source for sure, but you can warm them up by getting them over to your Instagram or starting that text funnel, that kind of thing. Warm them up. But yeah, that's where our top are coming from.
Awesome. So, Wedding Pro CEO, can you tell us what Wedding Pro CEO is and what inspired you to start it?
Yeah, so Wedding Pro CEO is an educational platform for all wedding business owners, and we teach marketing, sales, and profitability, and it's all the business behind your business. And the reason that I started it was because this is the number one struggle that I had. It was like I became very successful very quickly, which was such a blessing. And then I was like, I want to burn this whole thing down. Like, I hate everything about it. I want to burn it all to the ground because it was running me ragged. And I just had not built it for scale. I did not understand profitability. I did not understand how to build a team. It just felt like I was constantly just trying to keep the wheels on the bus. And it was just honestly something I wanted to run away from. And I'm sure there's a lot of your listeners who are thinking the same thing. Like, yes, success is such a great thing. And we all think we want it until we realize it's literally going to be our death. And so that's what it was for me. And there really wasn't help. Like, I was like, who do I ask? Like, who do I go to? Where do I find help on how to, and who can I go to that it's okay to say? Because from the outside looking in, I looked extremely successful, and we were, but it was such a mess on the back end. Like, I was such a mess that I was like, who can I actually say, like, this is a hot train wreck on the back end, right? So I ended up having to go outside the industry, and I really focused on getting business help. Like, how do I run a business? How do you understand profitability? How do you read a P&L? How do you know how much you can spend on a hire? How do you build a team? Like, all these things. And then as I started learning it and really reformatting my business and growing and loving my business, I was like, there is not education for people out here in our industry that are in what I call that middlepreneur stage. It's like, you're not just starting out. There's tons of education for that. But once you get successful, it's like, now what? Like, I'm successful, but I don't think I still pay myself enough money, and I still don't really know how to build a team. And if I walked away for even 30 minutes, it all fall apart.
Right.
And so that's a really terrible feeling. And so that's really who we work with. We help those business owners, just like the one I was telling you about that had that massive success story. It's like, you've already found success, but you hate it. And so how do you get yourself out of it? So we help business owners really scale beyond themselves and build a business that they love and that's profitable, pays them, but also gives them that freedom that they initially wanted from their business in the first place.
Right. That's awesome. So you guys help with, venue owners or vendors that are already successful, but it sounds like you really take them to the next level in terms of like their business acumen and like their business knowledge and like running their venue or their event planning business as an actual like business, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's so fun to really get into somebody's business and, really dig in. And I had a bar company yesterday I was working with one-on-one, and she said to me, this just feels so life-giving, because she was like, because you get it. Like, she's like, I've had coaches in the past who were great. Don't get me wrong. There was nothing wrong with them, but they weren't in the industry. And so she was like, the fact that like you get it, like you understand what happens at an event or what happens behind the scenes of an event or like how couples are shopping. She's like, it just feels like a breath of fresh air. And I was like, yeah, I think that's what I love so much about it is I spend a lot of time still now today. Like, I invest in my education so much in business education outside our industry. And then I adapt it and think like, how would this person's teaching about how to sell, widgets, how could we adapt that for how we sell? Like, how could we use some of these tactics in the wedding industry? And so then I can bring that back and adapt it to how our industry works. And so it's a lot of fun. I love it.
That's awesome. And how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So the best way would be to DM me over on Instagram. I'm at Brandee Gaar on Instagram, and I love getting DMs. So if you're listening to this podcast, shoot me a DM. Let me know that you heard me here on the Venue Insights podcast, and I would love to chat.
And I can confirm she is responsive, because that's how we got her on this podcast.
Yep. And it's me in my DMs. I still love it. I still get so excited every time I see that little red number at the top. So yeah, shoot me up over there.
Awesome. Well, Brandee, thank you so much. This was a great episode. I'm sure it will provide a lot of value for everyone who listens. So yeah, if you're a venue owner or you're an event planner, reach out to Brandee. She can really help you out. And Brandee, thank you so much.
Thanks, Will, for having me. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Awesome. Thanks.